with another episode of the 6 Yard Line podcast, transfer episode. This is what, show number 3, Noel?
Yeah, I think it's number 3 already. We're still working our way through, but it's slowed down, like really slowed down. Yeah, the
Sorry?
predictions. It's stopping us from doing the predictions, right? Because at the end of the day, I don't know if you saw the supercomputer predictions this week. But the Premier League super predictor had some absolutely wild takes on there. I'll post a short on it this week. It had Manchester United 5th, had Man City winning the title, and Forest finishing 17th, with Bournemouth just above them. And then it's a good segue into one of the teams that actually both the teams that we're going to talk about tonight, Everton and West Ham, are, according to the supercomputer, going to finish 9th and 10th. I don't know how.
Okay, well, yeah.
So we might as well start with Everton because I did tweet out this week and I posted a short this week on David Moyes' rant in Chicago on the fact that Everton can't get quality players over the line. Story of this offseason, apparently. But, yeah, they're trying to make some moves right now. So, let's start with Everton. What's your take?
Yeah, if you're an Everton fan, I don't even know what you have a brand new shiny team to look forward to. You have increased attendance. I guess there are things you have to look for. David Moyes came out recently complaining on the lack of transfers. You have to be worried, right? Like, you're seeing teams that have just got promoted that are spending money looking to strengthen themselves. Whether they get it right or not is a different story, but those are the teams that, unfortunately, a team like Everton, a team like West Ham, they'll be competing with, right? So for Everton not to have spent or made a couple more signings, at least impactful for what their needs are, their fans have to be a little disappointed.
Yeah, I think if you look at who they've signed, they've signed the Villarreal striker Berry, but in signing him, they let Calvert-Lewin go. They let a couple others. I think Decore left. I think there's 4 main starters that left, and they haven't really replaced any of them except for Berry. And then obviously today, we heard they were trying to negotiate with Southampton for Tyler Dibley. Again, Southampton want north of 45 to 50 million. And, I think a lot of people kind of think, he's a little bit overpriced. And again, I think when you look at guys like him, I kind of compare it to Elliot Anderson last year at Forest. He was like 35 million. I think 35 million is a reasonable amount. But Southampton obviously just got relegated and need to make as much money as they can. So I think they're looking more north of 50 million, which is a gamble for a player that, did kind of fall off towards the end of last season. So, Everton's trying to, bring in some youth and some talent, but it's not easy. Obviously, Kenny Tete at the start of the transfer window, accepted and was off to Everton, and then Fulham suddenly whoa, here's a better offer. And, Fulham decided to keep Tete. And then on top of that, you've got the Jack Grealish thing, which, we were on about this today. Again, it's like Jack Grealish is a straight loan, no option to buy. They're trying to keep this as simple as they can, because at the end of the day, they also can't afford to pay Grealish's wages outright. And I think that's a big part of it too, right? How much percentage of Man City willing to give up? And I think the reports this evening came out and said that there's several clubs looking at Grealish that may be willing to spend more on that loan than what Everton are. So even on that front, it doesn't look positive. And I think this is part of Everton's problem over the last few years is they haven't had a ton of money. Everybody kind of knows their financial situation. And obviously they've got a new stadium and all that stuff's great, and it will long-term benefit them. I just don't know how, the supercomputer picks them to be 9th. I think that's really overly ambitious. I really do. I'm not knocking them. I just don't think they have enough strength and depth across the course of the season. And I don't know where their goals are going to come from. They've struggled so far in preseason. I don't put too much stock into preseason because, no one really goes full bore at it, especially when they're in the States and they're all over the place. But they struggled to score goals last year. They struggled to keep clean sheets. Yes, they're going to keep Branthwaite and all that kind of stuff, but I don't necessarily think that they've improved. I think they're in a worse position. I think they will sign 3 or 4 players. I do think they'll get some talented players over the line, but again, they're going to be risk players, whereas, it's kind of a bit like the Ipswich were last year when they were buying players that based on hope that this person's going to develop into a really good player. But I struggle to see whether they're going to get real quality up front and find someone to get goals. If they get Grealish, I think they have a fighting chance. But I don't think they can go into any sort of competition for signatures because I don't think they have that much money available. And I don't think they want to get into those kind of deals with where they're overpaying.
Yeah. And if you're looking at, just compared to last year, they haven't added enough firepower for people to put them as a top 10 team. Like, I'm sorry, that's not being disrespectful. That's just the reality when you look at the roster, especially when you look at, they haven't, like, are they hoping some young player comes out of nowhere from the academy and steps up and is able to be, a 10 plus goal scorer? I don't know, but if you're looking at the roster compared to last year, that's not enough of an improvement for them to be a top 10 team, right? Maybe that prediction is with the assumption of them adding, 3 to 4 bodies to the roster in key areas. And again, it makes no sense, right? And we're not going to focus on Forest being 17th, but like, come on now, right? Like, to see that kind of drop and that kind of rise doesn't make sense.
No, and I think if you also look at some of the predictions in there, that obviously, I looked at Man United going to 5th, right? Like they've added 2 players, right? We'll talk about Sesko later, but I think if you look at Everton and I look at their strength and depth across all positions, and that's what we have to look at, there's not enough there. There's not enough. And I do generally fear that they could be in trouble if they don't get some signings soon. And I understand David Moyes coming out saying, hey, look, I need bodies. I need some talent. I need some players to come in and to lift this club because, yeah, it's going to have a great, shiny new stadium. And for the first 4 or 5 weeks, that might help you. But after a while, when it gets to December and the injuries come and you get through those winter months where it's sluggish, you get that fixture, heavy condensed, I can't even say it, those heavy condensed fixture schedules, I think they're going to struggle. I do generally think they're going to struggle. And if they do start getting 1 or 2 key injuries, they've not got enough. And we've seen that over the last couple of years. They just do not have enough to get out of it. And I think they could be quite easily pulled into a relegation fight again, because again, it's not too hard to imagine because they've been there for the last 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they have enough money to get out of that if that was the case.
A lot of it will boil down to money. So they're going to have to be very creative in the kind of players they bring in. They will need to probably bring in 2 to 3 players on loan. As you mentioned, a player like Grealish, he just may be out of their budget range. But I'm sure there's 1 or 2 other players. Chelsea has a bag of players. Man United has 1 or 2 that they'll be looking to offload, right? So if you can strike the right loan deal, that will help them. But as it stands, like no Everton fan's going to sit here and say, yeah, they look at them as a relegation team. But you have to think, amongst a few others, if things don't start off well for this team, they very easily could be, regardless of going into the new stadium. Because if you're not, like, what they're hoping for is to turn that stadium into a fortress, right? But it's not going to be a fortress if the team that's on the pitch isn't good enough to to, you know, I don't want to even say get draws, but you want to get wins at home, right? You want to make teams fear coming to the new stadium, not go there and look at that as a way to get a result.
I think there's 4 or 5 teams easily that if they don't start adding, and kind of one of the things that we're talking about today is some of those teams that just don't seem to be doing an awful lot. Now, obviously, there's a lot more time left, and I think some clubs are just kind of waiting to see where things land. And I just don't generally think Everton's done enough. And it was, I was curious at what they were doing, and then I read the David Moyes Chicago rant, and then I watched it on YouTube, and he's making the point that they really are struggling to get some players over the line. And I think at the end of the day, you've got to do whatever you can. And I look at teams like Sunderland, they're getting players over the line, and I think what Everton's trying to do is trying to raise the quality and caliber and not take any risks. And I think the problem is with that, if you don't get those Grealishes of the world to come in and to buy into what you're trying to do, then you're going to struggle. And I do generally think, I do think ninth's very ambitious for Everton at this point. But there is a lot of time left in this window, and I do think that, you can get 3 or 4 signings in and make a huge difference, and maybe that is more realistic if you get those signings in. I just haven't seen anything from them yet. Barry is unproven up front, and you've let some players that are, Premiership proven leave. Like Decore, I don't understand. I know he's getting old. I know he's had his better days, but he played fantastic down the stretch for Everton last year, and I don't understand that move unless he just said, look, I don't want to be in a relegation fight again, and maybe he saw the writing on the wall. But that's really Everton's, they've got to step it up, and I really do think that's a big part of it too, right?
Yeah, but they've got they've got a few weeks to get it going, but it's quite conceivable they could be struggling just to start the season, right? Like, they've got a week and a half before the season opener. I don't see them bringing in 3 or 4 players all in that window. They could, but I mean, you still want time to integrate them into the system, making sure they're match fit. So we'll see how things develop in the next by the season opener.
Yeah, I think it's getting down to the business end of the transfer window, right? So we'll see how it goes, and we'll see how they progress.
That will be it for today, because FFP will be a much longer conversation than a few minutes. So as usual, hit that like button, subscribe. 6 Yard Line Podcast. We'll be coming with our season predictions the season starts a week this Friday, so we're going to have to get that show recorded next week sometime. So we'll work on that in the next little bit and get that out there for you folks. Hope you're enjoying all the content. We're dropping a lot of our clips and a lot of shorts out there. So we love the views, but make sure you guys are liking and subscribing. We need to get those numbers up on YouTube.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. That's it for me. Noel, have a good one.
All right, man. Thanks. Talk soon.
All right. Talk to you later. Peace out, everyone.